Welcome back to ABCGH Spoilers channel. Today we will learn about the issue of a potential double Corinthos comeback that has fans buzzing with excitement and speculation after a tantalizing visual clue in a recent episode. General Hospital viewers might soon witness the triumphant return of not one but two beloved Corinthos brothers, as recent developments suggest both Morgan and Michael Corinthos could be making their way back to Port Charles. The possibility of this dramatic double homecoming has ignited a firestorm of theories and anticipation throughout the fandom, with social media platforms erupting in enthusiastic discussions about what such returns might mean for the show's current storylines and character dynamics. The speculation surrounding this potential bombshell development stems from a seemingly deliberate visual cue featured in the March 27th episode, which concluded with a camera movement that cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence. As Sonny Corinthos delivered a powerful declaration about protecting his family from future threats, vowing that no one would ever come after his loved ones again, the camera deliberately panned to and lingered on a framed photograph featuring both Morgan and Michael. This directorial choice, coming at such a dramatically significant moment, has been interpreted by many seasoned viewers as a deliberate breadcrumb leading toward future storyline developments. This carefully placed visual reference has sparked an avalanche of theories about what it might portend for the show's future direction. Some fans interpret the photograph as simply a poignant reminder of the devastating losses and near misses the Corinthos family has already endured. With Morgan presumed dead after a car bombing and Michael narrowly escaping death in the recent penthouse explosion. From this perspective, the photograph serves as an emotional touchstone, underscoring the high stakes of Sonny's current mission and the painful history that drives his determination to protect what remains of his family. However, a more intriguing interpretation, and one gaining considerable traction among the show's most dedicated followers, suggests this visual cue might be foreshadowing the return of one or both Corinthos brothers to the canvas. This theory has particular resonance given that soap operas frequently employ such subtle visual hints to prepare audiences for upcoming storyline developments. The strategic placement of family photographs, meaningful objects, or seemingly casual references often serves as deliberate groundwork for future narrative turns, allowing writers to later point to these moments as evidence that a surprising development was planned all along rather than hastily conceived. The possibility of Chad Duell reprising his role as Michael Corinthos seems the more straightforward of the two potential returns. The character's current absence has been explained through his recovery at a specialized German medical facility following the penthouse explosion that nearly claimed his life. This established narrative framework provides a clear pathway for Michael's eventual return to Port Charles once his recovery reaches an appropriate stage. The writers have wisely left this timeline deliberately vague, giving themselves flexibility to reintroduce the character when it best serves the show's narrative needs or when production considerations make it feasible. Morgan's potential return, however, presents a far more complex and dramatically rich possibility. Presumed dead for years following a car bombing, Morgan's resurrection would constitute a classic soap opera twist, the kind of shocking development that has kept the genre vital and unpredictable for decades. Brian Craig's potential reprisal of this role would open up numerous compelling storyline avenues, particularly given how much has changed in Port Charles since Morgan's apparent demise. Family dynamics have shifted dramatically, alliances have been formed and broken, and Morgan's loved ones have moved forward with their lives in various ways. His return would necessitate emotional reckonings and relationship recalibrations across multiple character arcs. Perhaps the most provocative theory circulating among fans envisions Morgan not merely returning, but returning as an antagonist, specifically as the mysterious figure who hired Soliski to target Sonny. This shocking twist would transform what initially appears to be a heartwarming family reunion into something far darker and more complex. The psychological dimensions of such a storyline would be fascinating to explore. What experiences during Morgan's missing years might have turned him against his father? What perceived betrayals or abandonments might fuel such a dramatic heel turn? How would Sonny reconcile his joy at his son's survival with the devastating reality of his betrayal? Alternatively, Morgan might appear in a less corporeal form if Sonny's Toronto mission goes awry. Should Sonny find himself in a life-threatening situation, a distinct possibility given Jason's expressed concerns about Sonny's condition, Morgan might appear as a vision or hallucination. Such supernatural visitations are a well-established soap opera convention, allowing for emotional reunions and meaningful exchanges between living and deceased characters. In this scenario, Morgan's spectral appearance could serve as both an emotional anchor and a motivational force, urging his father to fight for survival and return to the family that needs him. The Toronto mission itself represents a pivotal moment in the ongoing storyline, with Sonny and Jason preparing to interrogate Soliski, the hitman whose actions have caused such devastation. While Soliski pulled the trigger, so to speak, both men recognize that he represents merely one link in a longer chain. The true target of their investigation is the person who orchestrated the hit. This confrontation promises to be intense, with Jason and Sonny likely employing their considerable intimidation skills to extract the necessary information from their reluctant informant. Jason's concerns about Sonny's condition add another layer of tension to this already high-stakes situation. General Hospital spoilers suggest these fears may prove prophetic, with Sonny potentially experiencing health complications during this crucial mission. Such a development would not only endanger the investigation, but could also serve as the catalyst for the aforementioned Morgan Vision scenario. The dramatic irony would be particularly potent if Sonny's life-threatening episode occurred just as he was on the verge of discovering whether Morgan might actually be alive or somehow connected to the plot against him. The possibility of both Corinthos brothers returning to the canvas has generated considerable excitement on social media platforms, where fans have been enthusiastically discussing the potential implications. Many express particular enthusiasm for Brian Craig's possible return as Morgan, noting the actor's compelling performance in the role and the character's unresolved storylines. Similarly, Chad Duell's Michael has been sorely missed during his recovery period, with viewers eager to see how the character might re-enter the Port Charles landscape and what position he might take in the ongoing family conflicts. From a production perspective, reintroducing these characters would represent a significant creative decision with far-reaching implications for the show's narrative direction. Both characters have deep connections throughout the canvas, and their returns would necessitate adjustments to numerous existing storylines. For Morgan in particular, the writers would need to craft a convincing explanation for his years-long absence and apparent death, a challenging but potentially rewarding creative exercise that could yield compelling drama if executed skillfully. The timing of this visual hint coincides with a period of significant upheaval in Sonny's storylines, suggesting that any potential returns might be strategically timed to coincide with major developments in the Corinthos family saga. With Sonny facing threats from multiple directions and navigating complex personal relationships, the reintroduction of one or both sons could dramatically recalibrate the character's trajectory and emotional landscape. Whether returning as allies or adversaries, Morgan and Michael would undoubtedly have profound impacts on their father's ongoing story. As viewers eagerly await further developments in this intriguing storyline thread, General Hospital continues to demonstrate its mastery of the soap opera form's essential elements: family drama, surprising returns, complex motivations, and the delicate balance between honoring a show's history and forging new narrative paths. The strategic placement of that photograph, a seemingly small detail that has generated such significant speculation, exemplifies how effectively the show's creative team understands and leverages viewer investment in long-running character relationships and family dynamics. Whether both Corinthos brothers ultimately return to Port Charles remains to be seen, but the mere possibility has reinvigorated fan engagement and speculation. This kind of audience investment represents the lifeblood of long-running serialized storytelling, with viewers actively participating in the interpretive process and forming emotional connections to fictional characters that span years or even decades. The photograph of Morgan and Michael serves as both a narrative clue and a reminder of these enduring viewer-character relationships. In the immediate future, attention remains focused on Sonny and Jason's dangerous mission in Toronto, with Jason's concerns about Sonny's condition adding urgency to an already tense situation. The outcome of this confrontation with Soliski promises to reveal crucial information about who targeted the Corinthos family and why, potentially setting the stage for even more dramatic developments in the weeks and months ahead. Whether those developments include the return of one or both Corinthos brothers, the groundwork appears to have been carefully laid for such a possibility. As we continue to follow this evolving storyline, one thing remains clear: General Hospital's creative team understands the power of visual storytelling and the value of strategic foreshadowing. That lingering shot of Morgan and Michael's photograph may ultimately prove to be nothing more than a poignant reminder of Sonny's past losses and near misses, but the excitement it has generated among viewers demonstrates how effectively the show maintains audience engagement through careful attention to visual details and narrative breadcrumbs. Whatever the future holds for the Corinthos brothers, their enduring importance to both Sonny's character journey and the show's overall narrative landscape remains undeniable. The coming weeks promise to bring clarity to these tantalizing possibilities as Sonny and Jason's Toronto mission unfolds and potentially sets in motion a chain of events that could dramatically reshape the Port Charles landscape. Whether through Michael's recovery and return, Morgan's shocking resurrection, or some combination of these possibilities, the Corinthos family saga appears poised for significant new developments that will resonate throughout the canvas and potentially reunite this fractured family in unexpected ways. Next, we will learn about the issue of Ric Lansing's potential deception following a devastating car accident that could forever alter his relationship with Elizabeth Baldwin and create a bitter rivalry with Lucky Spencer. What do you think about this explosive situation brewing in Port Charles? Will Ric truly stoop so low as to fabricate the severity of his injuries to manipulate Elizabeth's compassionate nature? Could his elaborate paralysis charade successfully drive a wedge between Elizabeth and Lucky's rekindling romance? And perhaps most importantly, will Lucky's investigative background ultimately lead him to expose Ric's duplicitous scheme? These questions loom large as we anticipate the dramatic fallout from this life-altering accident. Lucky Spencer's determination to uncover the truth about Ric's condition could become the pivotal element in this unfolding drama. With his extensive background in investigation and law enforcement, Lucky possesses the perfect skill set to expose Ric's potential deception. We can envision Lucky meticulously planning his surveillance operation, perhaps enlisting the help of a trusted ally like Dante Falconeri or Sam McCall to establish a pattern of Ric's movements when he believes no one is watching. The moment of revelation would likely come during an unguarded instance when Ric, believing himself to be completely alone, abandons his wheelchair and walks freely around Elizabeth's home, perhaps reaching for something on a high shelf or simply stretching his supposedly non-functional legs. Lucky, positioned strategically with his phone camera ready, would capture irrefutable evidence of the deception that has upended his relationship with Elizabeth. This moment of truth would represent not just a personal victory for Lucky, but a vindication of his instincts about Ric's character. The confrontation that follows Lucky's discovery promises to be explosive and emotionally charged. We can imagine a scene where Lucky presents the damning video evidence to Elizabeth, perhaps during a moment when Ric is particularly playing up his helpless condition. Elizabeth's reaction would likely progress through stages: initial disbelief, followed by dawning comprehension, culminating in righteous fury at being so thoroughly manipulated. Her professional medical training would make the betrayal even more cutting, as she would instantly recognize how Ric has exploited her knowledge of recovery protocols and rehabilitation timelines. The moment when Elizabeth finally confronts Ric, throwing him and his belongings out of her house, would serve as a cathartic release of the tension that has been building throughout this storyline. Her words would likely cut deeper than any physical pain Ric has pretended to endure, as she makes it clear that his manipulation has not only cost him any chance at rekindling their relationship, but has destroyed any remnant of trust or respect she might have maintained for him. As Ric's deception progresses, his behavior would become increasingly bold and manipulative. Beyond merely maintaining the paralysis charade, he would likely engage in psychological warfare against Lucky, deliberately flaunting his growing closeness with Elizabeth whenever Lucky is present. We might see Ric requesting Elizabeth's assistance with intimate tasks like bathing or dressing, specifically when he knows Lucky will witness these interactions. The calculated nature of these provocations would be evident to viewers, but carefully disguised from Elizabeth. Ric might even go so far as to manufacture moments of progress in his recovery, creating scenarios where Elizabeth helps him achieve small movements that he presents as breakthrough moments, all designed to strengthen their bond and position himself as dependent on her specifically. These fabricated milestones would serve the dual purpose of deepening Elizabeth's emotional investment in his recovery, while providing opportunities to make Lucky feel increasingly peripheral to their shared life. Lucky's growing suspicion about Ric's condition would manifest in subtle observations and mounting frustration. Initially, Lucky might notice inconsistencies in Ric's behavior, perhaps seeing Ric reflexively move to catch a falling object or shift his weight in ways inconsistent with lower body paralysis. These small moments would plant seeds of doubt that gradually blossom into full-fledged suspicion. Lucky's attempts to share these concerns with Elizabeth would likely be met with defensive responses, as she interprets his skepticism as jealousy or resentment rather than legitimate concern. This communication breakdown would create additional tension in their relationship, exactly as Ric intends. Lucky's frustration would be compounded by his inability to prove his suspicions, leading to increasingly desperate attempts to catch Ric in the act. This desperation might initially make Lucky appear paranoid or obsessive, further alienating Elizabeth and playing directly into Ric's manipulative strategy. The living arrangement between Rick and Elizabeth would create a pressure cooker environment filled with tension and unspoken resentments. After Rick's release from the hospital, Elizabeth's home would transform into a battleground of competing agendas and emotional manipulation. Lucky's decision to move out rather than share space with his rival would be presented as a noble sacrifice, giving Elizabeth the space she needs to care for Rick, but would actually serve as the first major victory in Rick's campaign to separate the couple. The physical absence of Lucky from the household would allow Rick to gradually reshape Elizabeth's daily routines and emotional landscape, inserting himself into spaces previously occupied by Lucky. Small details would illustrate this encroachment. Rick's toiletries replacing Lucky's in the bathroom, his preferred foods appearing in the refrigerator, his opinions influencing household decisions. The territorial nature of these changes would be subtle enough that Elizabeth wouldn't recognize them as the calculated strategy they represent. Rick's manipulation of Elizabeth's compassion represents a particularly insidious form of emotional exploitation. Knowing her history as a caring nurse and naturally empathetic person, Rick would craft his performance specifically to target these qualities. His requests for assistance would be framed as reluctant admissions of vulnerability rather than demands, making it difficult for Elizabeth to refuse without feeling she's abandoning someone in need. He might reference their shared history, reminding her of times when they supported each other through difficult circumstances, creating a false equivalence between those genuine moments and his current fabricated helplessness. Elizabeth's professional pride would also factor into his manipulation. He would praise her medical expertise and care, suggesting that his recovery depends specifically on her skills rather than those of any other caregiver. This targeted approach would effectively transform Elizabeth's greatest strengths, her compassion and professional dedication, into vulnerabilities that Rick can exploit for his own purposes. The medical aspects of Rick's deception would require careful planning and execution. Following the accident, Rick would need to tend to not just Elizabeth, but the entire medical staff at General Hospital of his condition. This might involve bribing or otherwise compromising Dr. Isaiah Gannon to provide a diagnosis of temporary paralysis, complete with falsified test results and medical documentation. Alternatively, Rick might exploit a period of genuine temporary numbness or weakness following the accident, exaggerating and then prolonging these symptoms beyond their natural duration. His performance would need to be medically plausible enough to withstand Elizabeth's professional scrutiny. No small feat given her years of nursing experience. This would necessitate research on Rick's part, perhaps studying the symptoms and recovery patterns of similar injuries to ensure his portrayal remains convincing. The calculated nature of this preparation would reveal the true depth of Rick's determination to reclaim Elizabeth, regardless of the ethical boundaries he must cross. The initial accident that sets this elaborate scheme in motion represents a pivotal moment in the ongoing narrative. Recent spoilers reveal that Christina Corinthos Davis is actually responsible for tampering with Ava Jerome's car brakes, but in a tragic twist of fate, Rick and Elizabeth end up in the sabotaged vehicle instead. The crash itself would likely be filmed as a high-tension sequence, screeching tires, Rick desperately trying to control the unresponsive vehicle, Elizabeth's terrified realization that the brakes aren't working, and finally, the devastating impact. The aftermath would show emergency responders working frantically to extract the victims, with Lucky arriving at the scene in a state of panic upon learning Elizabeth is involved. This accident, born from Christina's misguided revenge against Ava, creates the perfect opportunity for Rick to implement his manipulative strategy, transforming a random tragedy into a calculated advantage in his pursuit of Elizabeth. General Hospital spoilers have been hinting at this dangerous collision course between Ric Lansing and Elizabeth Baldwin for weeks, with the upcoming car crash serving as the catalyst for a complex web of deception and emotional manipulation. The accident itself represents just the beginning of a storyline that will test relationships, reveal character flaws, and potentially reunite former lovers while destroying other romantic connections. The injuries sustained by both parties, particularly Rick's purported paralysis, will create circumstances that fundamentally alter the dynamic between Elizabeth and Lucky Spencer, with Rick positioning himself as the wedge that drives them apart. This narrative development builds on the recent revelation from actor Rick Hurst that Rick considers Elizabeth the one that got away and is actively trying to woo her back to him, suggesting that this accident and its aftermath might be exactly the opportunity Rick has been waiting for to reclaim Elizabeth's heart by any means necessary.